On my right, the Premier and Minister for Reconstruction, Anna Bligh, the Minister for Environment and Resource Management, Kate Jones, and the Green Building Council of Australia's Manager of Sustainable Communities, Adam Beck. How is the Queensland Government responding to the Federal Government's population strategy?
What we try to do with population growth is to plan for it, to work with regional Queensland to make sure that we're making living in regional Queensland an attractive option and making sure people understand just what great cities regional Queensland has to live and work and raise a family in. To that end, for example, last year in the budget we put an additional boost on the first home owners grant to people who bought their first home in regional Queensland. And there hasn't been a huge uptake of it, but it's an example of the sort of things we're trying to do to encourage people to look beyond the southeast corner.
Are there many initiatives for getting sustainable, renewable electricity supply for the trains?
The train network, the electric train network, sources its electricity from, as you'd imagine, the national electricity market. Some of the electricity that goes into that market and is put onto our trains is from renewable sources, but our renewable energy supply across Australia is still very low compared to a number of European countries. We have funded a new a solar thermal energy plant to add on to the coal-fired power station at Kogan Creek. So it will be a power station that will use both solar and coal-fired to increase its supply. It will be the largest, second largest solar thermal plant in the world, but it will only, I think it's only going to supply 100 megawatts of power. An average power plant supplies about 750.
On one hand, the state government espouses a sustainable Queensland addressing the harmful potential effects of climate change, where the Great Barrier Reef, amongst other natural assets, are at risk, yet its current and future economy is seemingly based on mining coal and coal seam gas. Please explain how Queensland can address climate change whilst expanding the coal sector. Premier?
We've been working very hard to build other industries, smart industries, high-tech industries, areas like biomedical research. We understand that the successful economies of this century are going to be those economies that are based on knowledge and innovation. And a lot of the investment you're now seeing, even in those traditional areas like mining, is actually going into mining technology, safety, doing it more efficiently, doing it in ways that has less impact on the environment, etc. And that's an area that our government, when we talk about smart state, that's some of what we're trying to achieve. And the investment in that has really driven some very strong growth in a lot of those new industries, and that's an area that we're going to keep working in.
Hi, Premier. I'm really keen to hear a bit more about the gas export side of things, because obviously with the gas being explored, we're going to see a lot more shipping through the Great Barrier Reef, and those ports that are being established along the most pristine parts of our state, we are asked to trust the big industries, and we've seen what BP did to the Gulf of Mexico. We would hate to see anything even comparable happen in Queensland. Would it not be better to consider having the exporters pay larger fees and take their ships right around and protect absolutely our coastline?
We're already challenged with the amount of export and freight that leaves Queensland to protect the Great Barrier Reef, and we found with the incident involving the Shen Neng last year just how easily something like that, thankfully it didn't go terribly wrong, but it was probably within a hair's breadth of being a terrible disaster for the reef. As a result of that incident, every ship, no matter what it's carrying, going out of Gladstone and all of the ports in Bundaberg and around those areas will now have GPS monitoring at all times of where they are and what they're doing. So if you see someone starting to look like they're going outside of where their course is, you can get to them before anything gets out of hand. Can I just give you some reassurance that this is certainly on the radar, that there is work being done about that. Some of these, the gas ships won't be leaving Gladstone until 2014. So in terms of the shipping issues, we've got some time to get, I think, that right.
As the debate has been tonight, we want the government to invest more in transport, we want the government to invest more in renewable energy, and I think that's right, but that also all comes at a price. And ultimately, when you do look at the electricity grid, and I think this is a discussion we as a society need to have, is what do we expect to be able to our standard of living to be in regards to if we, that transition is, as if, having plasma TVs, 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. When you look at the household footprint of a home in the 1960s, 1960s compared to today, it is almost doubled in size. You know, but yet our household numbers of people living in a household has halved. And I think one thing that came out of the drought is an opportunity for us to relearn some of those things about not wasting resources.
I suppose what I'd like to make a comment on, Lisa, is that there are cheaper ways of reducing our emissions. We can actually design our buildings in a way that you know, reduce the need to actually use artificial cooling and heating. The Green Building Council of Australia sets best practice standards for that across a whole range of building types, and I think as a design industry, and our architects and our building engineers have made significant progress in the area of designing buildings that reduce the reliance on energy consumption.
Thanks very much to our panellists for their valuable time here with us today.